Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday night, November the 24th, 2024. Here is episode 90, I think it's two, of the Wise Guys Sports Show here on the Wise Guys YouTube channel. I am one of your hosts. I am the Big Rican on Sports, Mike Martinez. And let's, without further ado, bring in my co-host, JC Blue Note himself, Mr. Jim Crinidian. James, it's a special evening, sir. Besides the fact that we are...
Very much so, because Mike didn't read the intro.
No, he didn't. No, he tried to memorize it, and he hasn't had enough of this yet. But more importantly, more importantly, the name of the episode is Family Fight Night. So you would think Jim and his brother were going to throw down on the internet, but that's not happening this evening. Look for old AOV clips on YouTube somewhere. You'll be able to find that. God damn you. But really, it is because we have a very special guest to talk about our first topic in tonight's hat trick, and that is coming to you live from his truck outside of his apartment, the little Rican, my older son Zachary. And Zach, welcome to the Wise Guys. As I told you before, we are a couple of old chuckleheads who do this for shits and giggles. So thank you for coming tonight. And there's a special reason that Zach is on. So Jim, let's hit the hat trick and let's get this going.
It's the three biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
So Zach is here for topic number one, as we had a correspondent at UFC 309 live from the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden. And now, Zach, you're stepping into a little bit of an octagon here because you got two Cleveland boys, and you.
Yeah, I know. It was definitely a rough night for Cleveland, as every fighter from New York that stepped in that octagon Saturday night, we claimed a really nice victory for each one. And honestly, the energy was something unbelievable. You wouldn't believe how intense and I guess words are hard to describe for this. It was just such a cool event to be at.
Well, I would say, Jim, you're more the fight guy, so I'm gonna let you take this from here.
What was your have you ever been to MSG before, Zach?
Yeah, so I went actually earlier this year in August, I believe it was, to see Slipknot on their 25th anniversary tour.
Very nice.
For the self-named album, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. Just being surrounded by almost 35,000 people of all in the same interest. You just walk through there and it smiles everywhere, and it's just a great energy.
So what was your kind of first impression walking in? What was the atmosphere like? What was kind of the buzz in the building, like on the concourse? Was it
so on fight night? It was a little freaky, we got an email earlier that they were opening the doors at 5, and at about 4:15ish, we got another email saying that the president-elect was going to be there. So then we see Secret Service swarming the building, which was a sight. But getting in there, it was like routine pat downs like you would get at most famous arenas. I mean, just done by the Secret Service. I don't think I'll ever forget that one. That's for damn sure. But going up, you head up to the overpriced food and drink and the overpriced merch, and you say to yourself, I might as well get the cheap stuff outside by the guys on the sidewalk. But
and then just starve the rest of the night,
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
So here's an interesting family thing. So far, Zachary's been patted down by the Secret Service walking into a New York sports event, and his grandfather's had his switchblade confiscated by the NYPD. So we are definitely a family who messes with law enforcement in New York and never gets in trouble.
So, as a fight fan, doors open at around 5. Pre-show, prelim started somewhere around 6.
Yep. Prelims actually So we had a fight canceled right about 5:45. They called it the first fight was canceled, so they started at 6:30.
That was one of the women's fights because she missed weight, right?
I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we missed that, but then all the prelims were exciting. I could be wrong, but I believe all of the underdogs actually won. I wish I could remember what the one fighter's name was, but he grew up in the city, and he gave Joe Rogan his it was a religious piece, his hat, and it was the most like I guess community bring like together that I've ever seen. Like you just hear all of these people screaming for this fighter that I believe his record was only like 6-0. Like he's not super big in the UFC, and then you have him and John Jones there for the home crowd. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was Bo Nickel. I just pulled up the fight card on here.
Bo Nickel.
He's
Bo
7-0
Nickel
after that fight.
The absolute. Oh, I'm about to get angry. He gave the most absolute disappointing fight I have ever seen for what he has done in the octagon so far. It was just deplorable. He should have been in there more. He should have gone to the ground. He's a goddamn wrestler, and he didn't do it. He didn't. And the fact that after the fight he said, "I think I put on a great performance," and then got booed out of the octagon.
I read about that.
It was horrible. Horrible.
Can I just say I love the fact that he got fired up about this like I do about our second topic of the night?
Now
I'm just like it was no fun. It was no fun to watch. And then getting into the big main card, it was a great day for Brazil. You had amazing fights, and then watching Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira too.
Yes.
It was phenomenal, and you can totally tell that Michael Chandler has been training for Oliveira. He really missed out on Conor because of now Conor's out of the UFC, so
right.
No more Conor ever, which more power to Dana for doing that. I know that was a tough decision to make, but
it's also really the first time when you think of what he's done with Cyborg, what he's done with Jones, he and all the breaks that he's cut Conor. It's about time he finally actually stood up and took some, really kind of took some initiative and actually backed up, kind of the threats that he made as the president of the company.
110%. Getting into the UFC, obviously the first big fight for me was Conor and Khabib, and then watching Conor tap and just watching the downhill slope he's been on since. He's not a moneymaker anymore. In reality, he's not even that great of a fighter. He's just an entertainer. When it comes down to pure skill, Conor really has a mediocre record here.
Just to kind of show you how long I've been a part of the fight game, the first UFC card I ever remember watching was Ken Shamrock and Chemo at UFC 48. Where
so I've actually
also on that card, George St. Pierre lost to I can't think of his name right now. Matt something. It wasn't Matt Hamill. Matt Hughes. On that card.
He was there at 309.
GSP?
Yeah, I do believe George St. Pierre was there, but Matt Hughes was as well. I figure I might as well throw on this while we're talking about it.
Nice.
You got your UFC shirt. I got my RDX gear on. Because I actually had to represent, because I know that Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira are big RDX guys. Like all the stuff I train in is RDX.
I like the hat because I'm the one who goes places. Zach knows. Every time I go to a game or something, I get a hat. So I'm proud of you.
I will have to say that I inherited this trait.
One fight I actually did not even really kind of comment on here. One of the prelims, I completely forgot about this fight. Ramiz Brahimaj TKOs in the first round Mickey Gall, and there was a little bit of a connection here.
That was actually the fight I was referencing, where he gives the religious hat to Joe Rogan. Oh my God, the the energy that was displayed after this was absolutely amazing. It was such a great fight. I believe it was the first knockout of the night. And it oh God, the energy.
It would the tie here is that trivia question. Mickey Gall's greatest claim to fame prior to this occurred at a UFC event in Cleveland, the first time ever in Cleveland on pay-per-view. Who did he beat? A very famous guy who had a very short career, a very failed short career in the UFC.
He didn't fight Brock Lesnar, did he?
No, Brock Lesnar had a
Punk.
career in the UFC.
He beat CM Punk?
He beat Punk.
Oh my God, dude! No, now I know what you're talking about. I watched
because Punk's second loss was actually turned into a no contest afterwards.
That's crazy. The only thing I remember about that UFC in Cleveland was that was Stipe's first title defense after really he kicked off the summer of winning by winning the heavyweight championship in 2016, followed up by, of course, the Calder Cup, and then, of course, the NBA championship later that summer with the Cavaliers. But, Zach, I want to go to the main event if I could, please.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, Stipe hadn't been in the ring 18, 19 months, I think it was.
3.5 years. His last fight when he lost the heavyweight title to Francis Ngannou in February of 2021.
Yep. Okay, so for 3 years out of the ring, Zach, did you think he had some rust, or did he bring it and just Jones? I saw the shot that got him. It was a kick to the ribs and basically probably broke one of his ribs.
If I'm correct, he had spleen and liver lacerations as well as 2 broken ribs from the one kick. It was all caused from the one kick. Unfortunately, no. I think it was 505 days for John Jones to step back in the ring himself, and for not having a lot of octagon time throughout his career, he really put on a show. I believe this was in the second round. I saw the post-fight interview, and he was saying all he could think about was Stipe calling him the B word. I don't know what our rules are on language on here, but
let it fly.
It doesn't fucking matter.
Stipe was calling him a bitch. He was talking about his kids. Now I saw the quote. I don't think Stipe was talking about his kids, but if that's what you got to think about, to put 8 elbows and 8 undefended elbows onto somebody's face, it was mind-blowing, really. I thought Stipe would have a little more. He did not have home field advantage, I will say that. The amount of people rooting for John Jones. I mean, I hate to say it, man, he's the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. Going into the future talk of it, I genuinely believe we will see a Tom Aspinall fight, because you cannot have an interim champion when the actual champion steps in the ring. Tom Aspinall is no longer interim champion.
We're going to get to that here in just a minute. Michael, go ahead.
James, could you please do me a favor, and could you hit the newly downloaded thing to the soundboard for that comment there?
Rusty cunt bucket.
Listen to me now, boy. You can't be the greatest pound-for-pound fighter if every time you win a belt, you have to get rid of it because you fail a fucking drug test.
Fair enough.
He has the UFC record for most defenses with championships. He's one of only, I want to say, 10 or 12 fighters to ever win in dual weight classes. He also has the UFC and Zuffa record for having the most number of championships stripped in his career. I have been the biggest John Jones hater for about really since the first Gustafsson fight. I think that, yes, he's great. He's intimidating. He uses his length, but he's cheap. He's two-faced. And whereas you say that there was a lot of love for John Jones, I do want to ask, what was the atmosphere in the building as that was going down? Because you got a lot of people who love John Jones, but then you got a lot of people like me that basically buy their ticket and pay their money on pay-per-view to watch him get his ass knocked out.
So in that aspect, man, yeah, I will definitely back up my statement. Is like Stipe walked out, and don't get me wrong, the crowd went crazy, but you hear I believe he walked out to some CCR, and that crowd went absolutely wild. Regardless of if you're a true fan of either fighter, you you have faith in one, but you know what's gonna happen. Like you said, Stipe, almost 3.5 years.
He was
He hasn't
42
been
years
ready.
old when he stepped into that cage.
Say that again.
He was 42 years old. I interviewed Stipe back in college when Stipe was at Cleveland State. Stipe and I knew each other pretty well during that time. Mike and I even talked about it last week. I did not have a good feeling about this fight because of how long he'd been off and also, his age at this point. John Jones is 37. Stipe is 42. Jones can take that kind of layoff. I mean, he's done it before. He's taken full years off because he's been suspended. They've bent over backwards to move cards for him. He ducked Cormier for 6 months. He ducked Ngannou for a year, and then Ngannou went over to PFL.
My question is first of all, if now, mind you, Stipe is closer to my age than he is to yours, Zach. What the fuck possessed him? Brexville plays their firefighters pretty good.
I think regardless of what Stipe did that night, he was going to retire after.
Oh yeah.
I think for this, he even said it himself. He wanted to take down the GOAT and retire. And in my opinion, Stipe didn't lose out on his career here. He ended it greatly. He ended it like a man should. He ended it strong. He ended it in good faith of his own ability, and you can't ask for much else from an older fighter like him. I mean, you see it. I'm trying to think. You see it in like Chuck Liddell himself, one of the craziest, most insane fighters I've ever seen. Also extremely coked out at MSG. I don't know if you saw the clip of him behind Aspinall, but he's just all jaw action going.
I think the difference is that when Liddell was actually winding down his career, he was taking whatever nostalgia fight that they could.
Yeah.
You look at Stipe's last, 3 losses in his career. Cormier, who's in the hall, who's a bona fide Hall of Famer and was a world champion. He lost the title to Ngannou, who arguably is the greatest heavyweight in the world right now. Because there's still a part of me that can't really, for as long as I've actually followed his career in MMA, it's still weird seeing Jones up at heavyweight for as dominant as he was at 205 for all those years. And then also, again, to John Jones, arguably pound for pound, one of the greatest of all time. I'm still going to actually say in my lifetime, GSP is the greatest fighter I've ever seen. John Jones is up there. His face is on the mountain, but I don't think he could touch GSP for the competition that he had to go through.
I actually really agree with that statement. You can definitely say he's number one for his time. It's like trying to how do you say it? It's like comparing Jordan to LeBron. It's a completely different game now.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
And speaking of a different game, I'm actually surprised we did not see more 12-6 elbows at 309, seeing as how it was the first event where it was made legal. A completely different game, completely different fights, completely different atmosphere. Before, these guys were treated like animals by the public, so they acted like animals in the cage. Now, as you can see, we are a little more civilized in the UFC, especially with the exiting of Conor McGregor. You can tell a lot of these fighters, especially in the lower classes, are settling down. Look at Sean O'Malley; he's been very quiet. Paddy Pimblett himself has been quiet since the King Green fight. These fighters have been a lot more respectful. Look at Chandler and Oliveira. Oliveira is telling the world Michael Chandler is the toughest man he has ever gone against, and all I've seen is nothing but respect. So yeah, when you put it like that, the animosity that these fighters had when GSP was at his prime, he would fucking maul John Jones, I think.
I mean, if they were at the same weight class. Now, one thing before we kind of go into before we go into Aspinall, because it's the elephant in the room. This was also something that not only was it the first one where they allowed the 12-6 elbows, and Mike, there's a rule that you were not allowed to go straight down with an elbow. It either had to be at some sort of an angle. You could not go straight. It was illegal for years. It would split guys open way too easily. That was actually something that was like going back, when Pride was still a thing, because everyone was actually saying you could do it in Pride, but you couldn't do it in UFC. They also there was also a very interesting story on ESPN. I don't know if you saw it, Zach, about the changing of the gloves.
Yep. So I believe it's been since 306 they got new gloves, and between the fight nights that have been going on and these huge cards, man, I've heard nothing but complaints from about 90% of the fighters that have used them. 309 they switched. I believe it was hours before they switched right back to the old gloves. Dana called it at the pre-fights and the weigh-in.
Continue
Keep going.
I want to grab one of my sets so I can show you what I'm talking about.
He does this all the time.
Now, I don't know what the initial reasoning was behind changing the gloves. I kind of just came about it on I believe I was just scrolling through the site the one day on the UFC site, and I came across something about it.
So this is your typical MMA glove. I'm going to turn my blur filter off here.
So you turned yourself off.
So a lot of you got the pass through, the kind of where they fasten at the bottom. Every company's a little bit different. With the RDX gloves that I wear, it's a 2-piece adjustment here. So the one around and then up here, and then they will actually tape these so the zipper doesn't necessarily come off. So you see that there's like no thumb support. Some promotions will actually put a thumb in there. The UFC and a lot of the North American ones do not. What they actually were saying is that they had extended the leather out really to the first digit. And it actually, what they were saying is that it was a lot of the fighters, they were typically you can actually bend at the knuckles, and there's not a whole lot of padding here.
Mm-hmm.
It's because typically you'd actually have tape under this. When I shadow box or I hit a bag, I don't, just because, these gloves are a little bit larger on my hands, so they've got a little bit more room with them. But they actually were finding by them bringing the leather out to almost the first digit that they were actually the gloves were extremely stiff. They were very hard to grapple with, and they actually were trying to do it to reduce to reduce eye pokes.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you actually think if it was coming out that far and it was your hands turning into more of a claw than opposed to being able to move out of a rake like this?
I'm trying to remember one of the worst eye pokes I've ever seen now. I believe it was heavyweight class. I cannot remember this fight now. I'm blanking. You guys make me nervous.
Why?
I'm just kidding. I'm waiting for my balls to get busted. But
You got time.
I like I said, I didn't really understand why they had gone with the glove change, but now I get it, and it's kind of redundant now that you say it to even try.
So
right.
let's let it fly. Stipe has retired. Jones, they've got to do it next, don't they? Because didn't they originally serve up Aspinall and then something happened? I don't know if somebody had a training injury and then Stipe got moved in.
John Jones tore his pec.
Okay.
So he was supposed to fight Aspinall. John tore his pec, and I don't remember who took John's place in the Aspinall fight originally. That's when Aspinall had won the interim championship, I believe.
It wasn't Curtis Blades, was it?
It might have been. I don't know. I didn't watch that Aspinall fight until I just watched a highlight from it because I was very confused on why they were announcing that he was there as the interim champion when John Jones was stepping in. So this was actually I almost missed the Jim Miller jumping guillotine choke because I was trying to watch Aspinall winning that interim championship.
It was Curtis Blades because he had actually won the belt from Pavlovich back last November, and then I want to say it was a defense against Blades, which ironically enough, he got revenge against Blades because the first time that Aspinall and Blades met was at Fight Night in July of 2022, and Blades won that fight in 15 seconds, and then Aspinall TKO's Blades 1 minute into the first round back in July.
Mm-hmm.
So let's play matchmaker now. We know what's going to happen. We know it's probably going to be sometime probably in the summer next year.
I'm fairly certain Dana said whoever wins this fight is fighting Aspinall because they are the heavyweight champion, and it just has to happen. Regardless, I do want to see Aspinall and Pereira, but I don't think that'll happen. Aspinall is just way too heavy for Alex to make that weight.
Yes,
but John Jones and Alex would probably be bigger than. 300 wasn't that great of a card. 299 was an absolute amazing card. So I would definitely say it could have a bigger ring than 300, but be a better card than 299. Like I already said, like we are definitely going to see Aspinall and Jones next. It has to happen. You cannot have an interim champion. I have to keep saying this to myself. I have arguments with my friends about it because, like you guys, they are not the biggest Jones fans, but they also are going with whoever would go against Jones. I believe we call them dick riders.
I'm just a Stipe guy, so that's not me.
It's the only comment I'll make on the subject. Obviously, Charles Oliveira is not one for the guy that he stiffed in the post-fight celebration, and I will leave it at that.
Wait, who did he stiff?
Donnie.
Mike, I'm going to play the clip.
Quite frankly, I'm a worthless fucking fat ass who shits his pants.
Dude.
Oh, wait, I just want to add this now. When he had walked out, they started playing the YMCA by the Village People, and it was fucking hilarious seeing this 35,000 people all doing
Jacking off giraffes.
Yeah. It was absolutely hilarious.
Mike, we were running short on OTRs for 2024. We just found one.
Maybe two.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's funny. So, two more things here before we let you go, Zach. So this way you can get yourself to bed here before too long. Where do you see that fight going? Because Aspinall has not been out of the first round since, I'm just looking at his last 5 fights. The longest fight that he had was his win against Volkov in March of 2022 that went 345. His last 4 fights have gone less than 345 combined. And we all know John Jones is not a knockout specialist. He's an endurance machine.
Yeah.
So before you guys get to that, once you weigh in on that, I want to get your ideas of where you think they're going to actually have said fight at. Especially Aspinall being from Great Britain and John Jones, of course, being from New York. Where do you think they're going to have that fight? But go to what you think is going to happen, but then let me know where you think they should have it.
So I think John Jones will play it smart. I do not think he's avoiding Aspinall. I think he's trying to get them both a bigger payout. Just like Cormier, I believe it was Jones Cormier 2, where Cormier thought he was getting 80 grand to stand and bang in the octagon and 80 grand to win. Dana calls him 2 days later. Hey, I'm going to send you $1 million because you did a good job. So I think the longer that it's held off, the better it will be for the two fighters, especially because, man, if it takes Jones to get Aspinall out of the first round, they are both going to be beat the fuck up by the end of it. Aspinall is a stand and bang fighter, but man, Jones has the longest reach in the UFC, I believe, at this moment.
At least in the heavyweight division, yeah, because Alexander Gustafsson is still on your roster, even though he's only at 205.
The biggest problem I see is either fighter making a weight close to each other. I believe Tom Aspinall has been walking around at like 268, and John Jones weighed in at 228. And so that's what I'm really concerned about for John is he going to step in the ring with somebody who, walks around almost 40 pounds heavier?
The one thing I kind of wish would have happened, that this fight would have happened several months ago, but yes, we understood that the MSG card had been in place for well over a year, at least in terms of the venue. The perfect opportunity for them to be able to get this fight would have been their debut in Sydney at 312, but that's in February. That's coming up in February. And then at 313 is going to be in Vegas in March. So, do they go to Toronto? Do they probably put this on neutral ground? I don't know if they'd actually put a fight that big, in Vegas. I mean, do they go to Saudi Arabia? They've got options here, but I don't see it being at their home base in Vegas.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way you can have this hyped of a fight out there. You need to bring it internationally. I would actually like
They
to
couldn't
see
do it in Vegas.
Say that again?
They can't do it in Vegas because wasn't Jones's license pulled in Vegas after his latest
drug scandal?
I can't remember if he got pulled in Vegas or California. I
believe it was. I believe you're right with Vegas.
Yeah, after his most recent drug failure, his license got revoked in Nevada.
Would you have this in LA, say at Steve Ballmer's new place?
Intuit Dome. Well, here's the thing. UFC 311 is going to be at the Intuit Dome in January.
Okay. You can tell I pay attention.
Do you put it at Staples?
No, I would like to see it back in Sydney personally. That would be an amazing fight to throw for the Australian crowd out there, seeing as how this would be their second appearance in Australia. Is that right?
Correct.
Could Aspinall and Jones fill SoFi, Jim?
They'd have to stack the card. I mean, you'd have to put at least one, if not two other title fights on there. Maybe you put Kayla Harrison on that card as like the next big thing in the UFC for women. You'd have to absolutely load that card up.
Who I keep seeing, and I'm actually a huge fan of him. He's only had 6 fights in the UFC. Paddy the Baddy, man.
I've heard of him. I haven't seen his fights yet, but I've heard of him. He's definitely one to keep an eye on.
110%, man. His fight against King Green, don't know how I feel about that one yet. was just it was nothing but less than stunning. He is absolutely confident, as he said in his UFC debut. I'm a scouser. I don't get knocked out. And going back through some of his tapes, I still have yet to see this man take anything less than abuse on the chin. I think he could definitely get a title fight before 10 fights. And I think that they should throw him on a big card like that because
It would be nice.
he's a show, man. He's a show. I would put in terms of show, I would put him up with Connor, with Derek Lewis, with even GSP. They just it's going to be a great fight. He's not gonna he will go for a first round knockout, but it's gonna be just bringing the hammer down.
So that's kind of leading me into my one of my last questions here. Who is the one fighter that you're like totally tuned in on right now that is like can't miss for you, that you will go out of your way to watch if possible without having
Alex
to drop
Padilla.
pay-per-view?
Alex Padilla. No question about it. Goddamn, I wish this guy started fighting like five years earlier. But he's going to have in comparison to a lot of guys, he's going to have a very short-lived UFC career. But man, is he the scariest motherfucker I have ever seen. Dude, he absolutely beat the shit out of Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland came to his gym. Alex is nothing but nice. He is so respectful with all the other fighters. And yeah, I mean, like, he's a show. He's fun. He's scary. He brings this tribal warrior look into the octagon, and the shaved head and the blank stare, and you can tell he's nothing less than a warrior, just ready to let loose.
So he's basically Ivan Drago. If he dies, he dies.
Exactly.
For me, I gotta say that the one fighter, the one who Mike will even tell you that I had to rearrange my entire schedule for next weekend is the PFL Finals, which I've really started to get into PFL, with ESPN Plus and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a female on their roster. Her name is Dakota Ditcheva. She is the next big thing in women's MMA. She is 13-0. She is fighting for the world championship at women's flyweight. And how the PFL works is that it's a regular season. So there's eight fighters per weight class, 5 men's classes, 1 women's. You get 2 fights. If you win, you score 3 points. If you get a stoppage, depending on what round you get a stoppage, you earn bonus points. And Dakota Ditcheva was the only one of the 48 fighters in the PFL 2024 standings that not only won both of her fights, but got first round stoppages in all 3 of her fights.
I told you on the phone today, dude, he loves this chick.
Listen,
she's funny as hell. She's probably one of the tallest women, and every one of them has been by knockout. Her last fight was against a wrestler, took a couple of shots, and then just got up and then just laid this girl out with liver. She won a fight. Her second regular season fight, I want to say, was back in May. She won with a liver kick, which never happens.
oof, all I can think back
is legit. I would definitely if you got nothing going on Friday afternoon, tune into PFL on ESPN Plus or ESPN2 around 4:00 Eastern. It's I cannot wait for this girl to take down Talia Santos, who had spent some time in the UFC and win a world title.
And if you need to sign in for ESPN Plus, just ask.
No, you have at first you had my ears, now you have my attention. I will definitely have to say, man, like, yeah, yeah, I will definitely be tuned in with that. Um, I myself would really love to get into MMA, specifically Muay Thai. I'm a bit more leg than I am torso, so I think I could really flourish there. And yeah, I just I want to learn as much as I can. And watching fighters like her will definitely, it sounds like, will definitely lead me in the right direction.
Her training partner is her older brother. He's not a fighter. He's basically just, and all they do is goof around. Like, you go on her Instagram, and 95% of what it is basically one of them playing a prank on each other instead of wrestling.
Yeah, you can't let the enemy in on what's actually going on.
Yeah, and she's
Right?
also endorsed by Celsius, so she gets my vote.
Mine too.
You and
Well-
her basically got me turned on to that stuff, man.
Well, it wasn't just me. The one upstairs did that too.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Zach, we told you a half hour. It's been 42 minutes, and away from topic, you just made my fucking year. Do you know that?
Well, oh, hold on, I lost my light. There we go. Yeah, no, I was very, very happy to be able to do this. The second I told him about the fight, man, he was like, "You're gonna be on the show," and yeah, it has made me very happy to do this. Very enjoyable.
Well, listen, keep this going, and you will be our fight correspondent. When there is a big one going, we'll have you on after it, and we'll let you go. Because I got to tell you, Alex, Jim, Willie, Patrick, you brought more in this short amount of time, mostly because the rest of us are all just, like I said, chuckleheads who screw around. You brought more into this. You impressed the shit out of me tonight. You really did. I can't tell you as I can't talk now. You have impressed the shit out of me tonight, and I can't tell you how happy I am that you were on tonight. I appreciate it. Now, do me a favor. It's dad time. Go to bed.
Gladly. It's working man time. I will gladly sleep.
No, I was going to say, dude, Mike, he's not your 4-year-old upstairs. It's not.
Yeah, but he's
bedtime.
Yes, but he's the 20-year-old who'll be 21 in a couple weeks, who works construction, leaves the house before 6 a.m. Good night, Zachary.
Good night, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been so nice.
It's been a pleasure. Standing invite is always open. Anytime you ever want to come back on, just get a hold of your dad and we will make it happen, Zach. This was an absolute pleasure.
Sounds like a plan, man. Thank you so much, and it was awesome meeting you.
As well, you as well. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday weekend, my friend.
Happy holidays, you guys. Have a great night.
Good night,
I'll
Zach.
call you tomorrow, bud. I love you.
Love you too, Dad. Bye-bye.
I'll see you. You literally just made my fucking year.
What? Because I actually was able to hold the conversation with him for 40 minutes. And
No,
you
because it's
sit back and just enjoy it.
I sent a message to Caitlin. I said, "Yo, your brother is cooking on the show right now." But no, thank you for that. I mean, granted, I didn't have much to say because I'm not the fight guy. But to hear him that passionate about it brought joy to my heart. So I thank you for that. Now let's get to a topic that's going to take joy from yours, and that is the second topic in our hat trick this evening. Oh, good God, the chaos in college football yesterday. We had another slew of ranked teams lose, including Army, which you said was going to happen, but I was holding out hope because I'm one of those. If I can just interrupt, 88-75, Cleveland, 4:24 left in the third quarter.
Yep, I got that on. And then also 6:43 left before the half. It is now 7-6 Rams over the Eagles. The Rams looking to get above 500 and basically looking to drop the Eagles back into a tie with the Commanders, who ended up getting stunned today, which we'll talk about in our third segment.
Yeah, because I'll ask the question then about that. But let's talk first about the big one, the top five matchup that went down from the horseshoe yesterday in Columbus. And Jim, you were right; it wasn't even a game. Indiana went down in their first drive and looked. And I'll say this: I listened to Paul Keels yesterday more than I watched Gus and Joel. Indiana looked very, very good in their first. What's that face?
Sorry, watching I got the sign. Somebody just got whacked right in the face.
In the second one, we'll talk about someone getting whacked because that was, yeah. But I will say this: yesterday, let's talk about some parallels. It was 10 years ago, almost to the day. Well, it's been 10 years since Ohio State finished their schedule with 2 games at home. In 2014, it was Indiana, then Michigan. This year, of course, it's Indiana, then Michigan, both games in the shoe. It was also 10 years to the day that Ohio State had its last punt return for a touchdown. Jalen Marshall against Indiana in 2014, Caleb Downs yesterday, and Ted Ginn, who was on Big Ten Network, who was there, actually called it. So if anybody knows that there's going to be a punt return for a touchdown, it's Ted Ginn. But I was very impressed with the Ohio State defense yesterday. Indiana's a good team. They are basically a victim of college football setting their schedule 3 to 5 years early. They also were supposed to play Louisville in the non-conference, and the Big Ten made them change that game. So now you're talking about a team that would have had a strength of schedule somewhere in the mid-70s with as good as Louisville's played, but it's at 106 because it's not – everybody said, oh, they lose to Ohio State big, they're out of the playoff. In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, because look what happened in fucking Oklahoma last night.
And I'll throw the rankings and the model up here, and we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. We're not going to go 45 minutes on this segment.
No.
We're definitely going to actually dig into this here a little bit, but let's call it what it is. What happened in Columbus, I will admit, I watched the first quarter and then kind of tuned out midway through the second quarter as I was actually decorating the tree and doing some other things. And then once I actually saw it, it actually opened up to, a 2-score game very early in the second half. I shut it off because it's like, I know exactly where this is going. Let's also, my father is going to call me a hater. You're going to call me a hater, but let's also call this exactly what it is, that Ohio State is the second best team in the nation. However, their resume seems a little tainted here at that point because you beat Penn State, who James Franklin outcoaches himself every single time they're in a big game, and then you actually beat an Indiana team that the only reason they were in the top 5 was basically out of default by everyone else losing in front of them. They were a Power 5 school who was undefeated, and quite honestly, the most overranked top 5 opponent I've probably seen in the last 10 years. There was no reason that they should have been on that field yesterday ranked 5th.
Well, it's not that you're a hater. There is very much a lot of truth in what you're saying. But I will say this. If that was a G on their helmet with the 106 rated strength of schedule, no one would have a fucking thing to say.
But let's also be honest, is that we're talking about an Indiana team that at the start of the season, out of 18 teams in the Big Ten, was ranked 17th. And the only team that they were better than was Purdue, who only has 1 win and got run off the field by Michigan State on Friday night. Indiana is going to play and probably whoop up on Purdue for the old Oaken Bucket on Saturday. And we'll talk some rivalry games here in a couple, towards the back end of this segment, because by the next time we come to you, all the rivalry games are going to be over. We're not going to do the extensive breakdown like we did last year, and that was a lot of fun too. But we didn't have this much controversy going on, a year ago when it was only 4. But Indiana still got a possibility of getting into the playoffs. Sure, their seedings took a dramatic hit, and with the way that all the chaos that I've actually got written down that we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes. Indiana's a good ball club. There's no way they actually, again, should have been ranked 5th. And I'm actually surprised that Ohio State didn't hang 50 on them yesterday.
They absolutely could have. They did leave a couple. Will Howard threw an interception at one point in time. He did, however, set the record for best completion percent. He won't lose. Let me back up because I'm still tripping over my words. Will Howard will now have the best completion percentage in Ohio State history, no matter what he does against Michigan next week. That's saying something, taking that from C.J. Stroud. But yes, they left some points on the board. They should have scored 50 because they had a recovered fumble in the red zone. Howard throws the interception, and then just a bonehead play call by Chip Kelly at one point in time that cost them on a fourth down. Game really should have been 52 to 7 yesterday. I think if it would have been 52-7, we'd be talking about Indiana out of the top 15 if they would have gotten killed like that. But going back to your point about Ohio State's resume, be that as it may, James Franklin may outcoach himself every time he's in a big game. Agreed 100%. Should have Indiana have been ranked number 5? That's up to the rankings. That's not anything I'm going to get into. But I will say this. When it comes down to it, if those two teams were in the SEC and had those 3 letters next to their name as opposed to the B1G, there is not a single thing anyone would fucking say about it. Because guess what? Kirby Smart always outcoaches himself against Alabama. Every time. With rare exception. And Sarkisian can't get out of his own fucking way against anybody until this year. So it's the same thing. It's like when Vandy was ranked. Vandy had the win against Alabama. Really hadn't done much outside of that.
Right.
But they're ranked because of it. Indiana, did you see some of the offensive numbers that they put out yesterday?
No,
Their average margin
on the background is so it was like it was background noise. I wasn't paying all that. Plus, also at that point, with the biggest TV shill in college football commentary, I had to put the volume on mute for most of the experience.
I actually told Nick yesterday that Jim Lachey is hard to listen to.
I'm not talking Jim Lachey.
I know you're talking Gus.
Right.
But I will say this, Indiana had the largest margin of victory of any team in the country going into yesterday.
Yes.
They were the number 1 run defense in the country going into yesterday. And if you watched early, Ohio State had a hard time getting the running game going, especially with the injury to their center, the transfer from Alabama, who had been the anchor of a questionable offensive line going into this season. So is Ohio State's resume propped up? Probably. But we're also in an era with a committee that ranked Fresno State number 25 just to get Alabama into a playoff. So
this is the same committee that ranked Indiana 5th to be able to bolster Ohio State's resume when they ran them off the field.
I don't think they did that by ranking them 5th. They were an undefeated Power 5 team. You're going to be ranked above these 2 lost teams in the SEC. It doesn't matter. Because unfortunately, still in college football, style points and actually winning games means more than where you play or who you do it against.
So let's talk about the other ones down there.
Bama just got fucking boat raced.
Yeah, which is surprising considering this is a little bit of a rebuilding year for Oklahoma. This is culture shock for them.
It really is. And I will say this, Jalen Milroe has just pushed himself to the second round of the draft. He has played terribly this year.
That thing that you sent me earlier this week, I wanted to literally reach through my computer and punch you in the face just for sending it for the mock draft.
Oh, I did that on purpose to see if you would try and reach through your computer and punch me. Most people haven't taken Cam
One of
Ward.
the gifts or things that Mike had sent me this week, and I'm serious. No more Diddy memes. They've jumped the shark, dude.
The midget one's the little person one's my favorite.
Emotional damage.
But one of the things he sent me is that somebody drew up a mock draft that had the Cleveland Browns picking at 3, which they ain't going to be anymore. We'll talk about that here in the second half of the show for a minute. Actually, we might be able to talk about it in the next segment here. But they had the Browns taking Jalen Milroe at 3.
Mm-hmm. Look, again, I'm going to say it. and I've said it every time we've done a draft react. I've said it every time we've done a mock draft. The last good Alabama quarterback, and don't bring up fucking Tua, who had an extended career was Joe Namath.
I know it's a little early, but since he's basically come back in as the starter, Bryce Young has looked very good for the Panthers. They just actually have no defense right now.
Do you want to know when people bring up Bryce Young, what I hear in my head? Do you remember the spring training montage from Major League 2?
Yeah.
When Willie Mays Hayes hits the home run and Rube looks at Lou Brown and goes, "Wow, that went pretty far. Oh, but dude will be bagging groceries next week." That's what I think of when I think of Bryce Young.
So Notre Dame goes out, crushes Army like we all
Beat
thought.
the piss out of them.
Hang 50 plus on them. Army's quarterback runs for 190 yards. And I mean, this is actually where we all thought it was the other shoe was just waiting to drop on Army. You can't be that run heavy, especially when you're going up against Notre Dame, who's got one of the better run defenses in the country.
Agreed. And again, on an intellectual level, I knew Notre Dame was going to stomp a mud hole on them and walk it dry. Shout out Stomper. But the part of me that had seen them dominate games on the ground and play keep away, I thought they could have done that against a Notre Dame offense that has come along week after week after week. But it was not to be. Notre Dame won that game handily.
Do you think that's a different game if it's in West Point as opposed to South Bend?
That was at Yankee Stadium.
That's right. That's right.
No, I don't think I don't think it changes much on location. If you would have had that at Mikey Stadium, you probably couldn't have had it at Mikey Stadium. It's not big enough. And if you would have had that in South Bend, I think it would have been bigger.
And then lastly there, taking a dramatic, probably the team that had their playoff chances hurt the worst was Colorado going out and losing to Kansas.
How are they hurting it worse when BYU got beat by Arizona State?
We're going to talk about that here in a second because there's still a way for BYU to back in because I've got conference breakdowns here for some of the chaos.
So let me talk about the Colorado game real quick. And let me say this. The whole thing with Shedeur Sanders, I just swung at that ref too.
You still can't that ref, and there should be absolutely no reason he plays on Saturday.
I agree with you, but I'm going to put a caveat on it. That guy was trying to end his season and his career possibly. That player from Kansas should have been tossed. That first of all, that's going low like that, and that should have been a targeting call. He got folded in half after the play, James. I know you don't like him, and I know you don't like his daddy. But that play there on any other quarterback, you and I are talking about people need to get suspended. Should he have touched the ref? Absolutely not, and he should serve a suspension for that. But I've now got to question that referee crew because that hit should have had that player tossed. That's horseshit.
That's Shedeur Sanders basically bitching to and his daddy bitching at everyone for, was it a dirty hit? Absolutely. You cannot put your hands on a referee. As much as I hate the entire family, though, I'll allow it.
Let me ask this question. If that's Carson Beck and Carson Beck puts his hands on a referee, is there that much outrage?
Yes. You cannot put your hands on an official.
From you, I'm talking overall.
Yes. You put your hands on an official, you're suspended. And since that happened in the second half, they're going to review this, and he's actually going to get yanked for Colorado's final game on Saturday against Oklahoma State. Now we'll break some of these down here in a couple of minutes, but I don't want to actually get into it, but
no,
somebody in the NBA did that, and they're going to be sitting home the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So again, we won't get into that right now, but I don't care what it is. I don't care if somebody comes up and like if he's wearing a shield or something and they come up and somebody punches the shield out and pokes him in the eye, a la the Three Stooges. You do not put your hands on an official. unless you're
I
actually
don't.
subtly moving out of the way because you're not paying attention to where you're going, or he's not, and you're going to run into him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you 100%. My issue is with this, and I'm going to say it, and it's going to sound very homerish to Dion and his kid. Any other quarterback in the country that's on a Power 5 team, the guy who hit him is gone. And they didn't even throw a flag. They didn't even throw a flag.
I actually wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they actually broke the kid off, broke the Kansas offender off as well for the hit. I am a very firm believer that the NC2A needs to start having their officials with all personal fouls need to be reviewed to be able to see if there's an initial and a retaliation. They take it's something that you've got to replay and basically every college football game in the country is televised. Some may actually, like a CBS or a Peacock or a Fox game, certainly you're going to have a lot more cameras, but every single college football game is broadcast on ACC Network, SEC Network, Big Ten Network, ESPN Plus, and we're talking even 1AA, Division II, and Division III. There are enough cameras and enough angles that you can have, especially at the Division I level, to where you can review every single personal foul call. You can look at it like technical fouls, like you would in the NBA. It's subject to review.
I agree with you. And that goes across. And I think my own issues with the targeting rule there kind of taint me for that. But I agree with you. They should have to review that. And especially things like, low hits on quarterbacks, chop blocks, the whole 9 yards. You've got to be able to review that 100%. So let's get to where the AP and the coaches poll landed today so we can start talking a little more playoff before we get into finals before next week. So obviously the top 5 changes with Notre Dame going into 5, Georgia back up at 6, Tennessee at 7, Miami 8, SMU at 9. I don't agree with that ranking. Indiana down to 10, Boise at 11, Clemson 12, Bama should be out of the top 15. Arizona State, who had a big win. South Carolina should be higher than Ole Miss, who lost. Interesting. Army stays at 25, which I like, by the way. They should be in the top 25. So let's see where Jim's playoff thing landed. So this top 4 stays the same. Oh, no, you have Notre Dame at 3. Which, again, I don't think they're going to do because it's a top 4 conference champions. So Ohio State would get Arizona State again. That makes me happy. Penn State, Clemson. Georgia, Boise would be a good game. And then Tennessee and Miami landed there. I don't think Notre Dame is going to get a bye, Jim. They're not.
They're 5th right now, but I said we got some breakdowns here. So we've actually got a couple of teams already locked into, because let's be honest, by the time we come to you guys next week, we're going to be talking conference championship matchups, to where this is the last week the teams are going to be able to really make their case. Whereas next week we're just talking about seeding. We know who's going to be where. It's just where are they going to get slotted, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But in the SEC, with all the chaos, Georgia's in. Texas, even though they are the number 3 team in the country, they control their own destiny. They win at Texas A&M, they're in. They lose, Tennessee gets in because Georgia's got the tiebreaker over Texas.
Okay. So that works. Now moving to the Big Ten, I can help break this one down because I actually know this one off the top of my head. Oregon is in and will be the home team in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. Ohio State avenges the last 3 years on Saturday. They are in.
They are in.
And it's Ohio State, Oregon again. If Ohio State loses, Penn State would have to lose, and
Indiana.
No, I'm saying if Ohio State loses
conference
and Penn State, if Ohio State loses and Penn State loses, Indiana goes to the Big Ten championship game. If Indiana and Ohio State lose, Penn State goes to the Big Ten championship game. I think we're getting a rematch, to be honest with you. I think we're going to see the rematch of the October 6th game from Autzen on a neutral site, which, by the way, that might be the difference. And because Oregon has not looked good the last few weeks, Jim. You can say that.
Now let's get into silly season. ACC, the highest ranked team in the top 25 is Miami at number 8. They are 10-1 overall. They are 6-1 in the ACC. They might miss the ACC championship game. Right now, Mike, can you name who is leading the ACC right now?
That would be Southern Methodist University.
At 10-1 overall, 7-0 in the ACC. SMU finishes their season on Saturday hosting 6-5 Cal. Miami goes at 8-3 Syracuse, who's 4-3 in the ACC. The team that we're not talking about right now that could knock Miami out.
Don't say it.
The Clemson Tigers.
God, I'm so sick of fucking Dabo.
Clemson right now is ranked 12th after getting run off the field in the season opener against Georgia. Clemson is 7-1 in the ACC. They finish in probably the biggest game of the weekend. They will finish against number 16 South Carolina, who is 8-3. So you're talking 12 against 16, and the winner is going to go. If Clemson wins, they will actually have an 8-1 record. Miami will actually only be 7-1. So since Clemson and SMU scheduled one extra conference game, Miami only has one loss. No. Gets shut out of the ACC title.
Miami's playing Syracuse. Syracuse is ACC. They have not the only.
But here's the thing: Clemson right now at 7-1. Their schedule, their ACC schedule is done.
No, it's not.
Miami have not played each other.
Wait a minute. Hold on. How is Clemson only playing 8 conference games? The only conference that plays 8 conference games is the SEC.
Miami's game on Saturday is going to be their 8th conference game. SMU is going to be 8 conference games. So they all got 8 conference games. But Clemson's rivalry game is the Palmetto State shootout against South Carolina.
Real quick, 108.93, 7:14 left. Good guys.
110.93, 7:37 left.
You're killing me with this, having it on the TV shit. Hold on a minute. That doesn't make any sense. I thought the only conference that played 8 conference games was the SEC. So that means I got to look at this because Syracuse is an ACC game. So, by the way, so is Cal.
Right.
Clemson had to have played the 9 conference games already.
Clemson's already finished their ACC schedule. They're 7-1 in ACC play, and their last game is an out-of-conference game.
So the ACC is only playing 8 conference games too.
Correct.
So the Big Ten is the only conference in the country that plays 9.
Because you also have 47 teams in the Big Ten.
We have the same in the fucking ACC. These Southern fucking pussies. Play 9 conference games and shut the fuck up. Jesus. Although Clemson having the out of conference, so does Georgia, or so does Georgia Tech.
Well, the reason
they play clean old fashioned hate.
Well, here's also the other tiebreaker because even if Clemson and Miami, if Miami wins against Syracuse, they're both 7-1. Here's the thing. Miami did not play a game against the top 25. Clemson did, even though they got run off the field in the opener. By having that one game against the top 25 opponent, even though they got blown out, that basically is the tiebreaker over Miami. So Miami has to win, and South Carolina's got to upset Clemson, and Miami actually gets SMU. Because SMU is basically already clinched.
That's insanity. That is clinical fucking insanity.
But wait, it gets much worse.
Talk about the Big 12, would you?
You have a 4-team tie in the Big 12 after the Saturday shit show. Arizona State is up to 14th. They are 9-2, 6-2 in the Big 12. BYU, after back-to-back losses, after starting the season 8-0, has lost 2 out of their last 3. They are now 9-2 overall, 6-2 in the Big 12. Iowa State is up to number 17. Iowa State is 9-2 overall,
9-2,
6-2 in the Big
6-2 in the conference.
and you still have Colorado mathematically alive at number 23. They are 8-3 overall, 6-2 in the Big 12.
So Colorado plays Oklahoma State.
I have the schedule here. Arizona State and Arizona will meet in the duel in the desert at 3:30 Eastern. And Arizona is 4-7 and in second last in the Big 12 right now. So you can almost kind of pencil in Arizona because now they have the tiebreaker over all of these teams right now.
Okay.
So Arizona basically kind of controls their own destiny. BYU will host 4-7 Houston.
Jesus Christ.
Iowa State will host 8-3 K-State.
Ooh.
And Colorado probably missing their starting quarterback, as we've discussed, will face 3-8 Oklahoma State, who are 0-8 in the Big 12 and dead last in the conference.
So if Colorado and Arizona State are the two that, let's say Colorado, Arizona State, and BYU all win. And you have the one team, who was the fourth team?
Arizona State.
All right. So Colorado, Arizona State, and BYU all win. Are we getting BYU Colorado in the championship game, or are we getting BYU Arizona State?
We're getting BYU Arizona State. Arizona State controls their own destiny right now. And then it's basically kind of Arizona State wins the duel in the desert, they're in. And then it actually becomes BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado. Colorado right now, for actually having that loss and the fact that they would be 8-4 overall, they need this win more than anybody else because they also need help to get in. So this is basically like wild card. This is like week 17 of the NFL season. It's all a matter of everyone knows who needs to be where. So who actually needs to hold business and who actually has to look for help. And in this point right now, Colorado is the one that probably needs the most help of any team that's on the bubble for getting into conference championships of any of the Power 5 schools, any of the Power 4 conferences, I should say.
Did you see the Pac-12's final champion is a team under 500?
Yes.
Wazoo should have never lost that game. So let me ask you this question. How much into the Charlie Day scene from It's Always Sunny are we going to have to go with this thing? Because here's the thing.
I think you're going to actually have to splice a little bit of column A and a little bit of the basketball playoffs, kind of throw them together, and with the spirit of Thanksgiving coming up this week, throw them all together, mix them up, stuff them in the bird, and see what comes out.
Because you do understand that if I can time this right, in 2 weeks we can be live while they're doing the matchup show. Oh no, that's at noon. Never mind. We can't be. But in 2 weeks, I say we try and get the horsemen together and break this fucker down.
Because we're going to need it. So again, we're
going to need liquor.
With the model, Oregon, as it stands right now, Oregon gets the bye, leading the Big Ten. Texas is the number 2. Notre Dame sitting at fifth overall in the country would certainly get the bye. I don't have Boise in there because at that point, SMU has made the argument to be the Power 4 school to supplant them from getting the bye. So SMU slides into that role leading the ACC.
And if I may, the Big 12 champion will get a bye. Notre Dame's not getting a bye. It's the top 4 conference champions, which means if Boise's one of the top 4 conference champions in the committee's eyes, Boise is going to get the 4.
Well, Boise's in the Mountain West, which is a group of 5.
Yes, but the thing is, they put Boise in the 4 slot last week because Boise's going to win the Mountain West in a fucking walk. So Notre Dame, as much as the rankings mean all that, Notre Dame would end up probably, if I had to guess, let me put it this way. If the Big Ten championship game goes the way I personally want it to, and Georgia wins and Texas wins the SEC, and SMU wins the ACC, and BYU wins the Big 12, Notre Dame will be the 6th seed in the tournament because the number one overall at that point in time is going to be Ohio State. 3 wins in the top 10 in 4 games. You beat number 1 on a neutral field to win a championship. And then that moves Oregon to the 5, where Oregon would host the first round game, and you'd have to get one of these Southern teams going up to fucking Autzen.
Well, that's if things were to hold serve like what you have now. Again, with all that chaos that we've actually just anticipated, who's to say that Miami doesn't beat SMU, even though Miami may not have as good of a. I mean, well, then again, Miami still would actually have, a good enough resume to get a bye there. BYU, we were thinking could be strong enough in that Pac-12 and then really kind of shit the bed the last few weeks. So you're going to have, two teams more than likely in your Big 12 championship game with 2 losses. Just, I mean, it's going to be the only Power 5, conference that's going to be able to say that because Oregon's going to be undefeated.
No. The SEC champion is going to have 2 losses.
Texas only has 1.
Okay, I thought Texas lost twice. But everybody else that could qualify if Texas does lose all have 2 losses. So if Texas drops their game to A&M, Tennessee gets in the SEC championship game, both Tennessee and Georgia have 2 losses.
Right.
So it could have more than 1. But I think you and I can agree on one point, and that is whoever wins on December 8th in Indianapolis will be the number 1 overall seed in this thing.
Absolutely. I mean, there's and then the loser is going to probably end up just dropping down to the 5 seed, which they're still going to host, but they're going to have to play the 1 extra game, but they're going to end up hosting that week.
Yeah, agreed. Because I think a 1-loss Oregon or a 2-loss Ohio State will still be the 5 or 6. I think at that point in time, if Notre Dame holds serve and wins this week, the loser of the Big 10 championship game, if it is Ohio State, would be the 6. Notre Dame would be the 5. And if it's Oregon that loses that game, it would be Oregon at the 5 and Notre Dame at the 6. So either way, if you're looking at this now, your SEC runner-up may not even make the fucking dance because they're a 3-loss team if Texas doesn't hold serve.
Can we also talk about completely getting away from the playoff here? Arguably playing some of the best football in the country is a team who's not going anywhere and actually might not even make a bowl game, and that are the Kansas Jayhawks.
Who have the best resume in the country. Think about that. Think about their resume in a minute.
They've beaten 3 ranked teams in 3 consecutive weeks and lost at the gun to Kansas State the week before. Here's a team that started 1-5 and then is now with a win on Saturday gets themselves bowl eligible.
My hat's off to Kansas the way they played. I mean, they went out and dominated that game yesterday against Colorado. This has been one of the more fun college football seasons from that perspective. With teams that you just don't think are going to win these fucking games, just throwing dudes around. I thought Kansas would give Colorado a game. I never thought in a million years Kansas would just dominate them like that. So this is going to be interesting the next 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks are going to be just fucking fun.
So let's take 2 minutes here because we're already at 1:20, and then we still got one more topic that we can cover here because we've got a very short blast tonight. But let's actually look ahead to next week's schedule because it's rivalry week. So
yes, it is.
I'm not going to actually break everything down. We already know what's going to happen with the game at noon on Saturday. Michigan travels to number 2 Ohio State. Buckeyes favored by 20.5. Michael, do they cover?
No. I don't think they cover. I think this Michigan team, they fucking cover. This team is dog shit. I can't fucking wait. You got no idea. Dude, I'm going to be such a dick on Sunday. Listen, there's a
glad that we actually went to that we're not doing a Black Friday show this year.
No, I would be insufferable. But I want to take you to something that that hit for me, and then we can go. I want to go to the rest of the games. Did you hear Will Howard's post-game comments after Indiana?
I did not. Do you honestly think I
Okay.
care?
No, it's not about that. It's you still live in Buckeye country. I figured you may have seen it on the news or something. First of all, him going like this and throwing a cigarette on the ground and stamping it out was pretty fucking wild. Oh, come on, dude. That's funny. Which one are you going to hit now?
Trying to figure out. Yeah.
Rusty,
I'll just do Pippin. Will Howard impassionately talked about how this game was the reason he came here. And he said, I'm in it. I've seen it from afar. It's not about me. I want it for all the guys who stayed this year to win this game and to go on and play for a Big Ten championship. That brought some joy to my heart. He's better than I thought he would be. But he's got to prove it on Saturday because he can. What'd you call me?
Dennis Green. Because he is who he thought he was.
I didn't realize I said that. I'm sorry. But no, I think Ryan Day is going to try and do this year what he said he was going to do in 2020, especially after scoring that late touchdown against Indiana, which he's taking some shit for.
Some of the other games we've actually got here is I can't stomach that anymore. 7:30 p.m. on Black Friday. Georgia Tech travels to number 10 Georgia. Clean, old-fashioned hate. Georgia favored by 19.5.
Georgia doesn't cover. Carson Beck's going to throw the ball to Georgia Tech too much.
I think it's a little bit more entertaining than people give it credit for, but it's still the greatest rivalry, the greatest name for a rivalry game in the history of rivalries.
Agreed. And real quick, if I could just jump back to yesterday and give your Florida Gators some flowers. I was happy for you, my friend.
There's part of me that wasn't, because it actually bolsters Billy Napier's resume.
I was thinking of the Michael Corleone line from Godfather Part 3. You and Billy Napier. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
On Saturday at noon, no real ramifications with this one, but it's always an entertaining one. Governor's Cup. Louisville travels to Kentucky. Louisville favored by 3.5.
I think Kentucky wins. Because if you look back at what Kentucky's done against teams that can throw the football, and that's what Louisville's done this year, a good amount. They've played very good defense in the secondary. I mean, come on, Georgia got out of there with a 1-point win because Georgia got lucky. But no, I think Kentucky can win this game.
Even though we had the crosstown showdown yesterday, there's still another decent rivalry game going on with a team in Southern California. And at 3:30 p.m. on CBS, number 6 Notre Dame will travel to Pasadena to play USC. Notre Dame favored by 7.5, and always an entertaining game between those two.
Watch Lincoln Riley win this game to save his job.
3:30 p.m. on Saturday, Auburn travels to number 7 Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Bama favored by 11.5.
A friend of mine who I met when I moved down here, she will be at the Iron Bowl. And I pray to God for her that Bama doesn't shit the bed like they did against Oklahoma last night.
The one that I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to a little bit more than in past years, 3:30 p.m. on Fox. We alluded to it earlier for just a moment. Number 21, Arizona State will travel to Tucson to take on Arizona. Sun Devils favored by 9 in the duel in the desert.
Rivalry games are tough. I think Arizona State wins and they cover, but the Wildcats will keep it close for most of the game.
7 p.m. in prime time. This game has absolutely no luster this year, although let's actually see just how disappointing both of these schools can be. Florida will travel to Tallahassee to face the 1-47 Azerbaijan Seminoles, and the Gators are favored by 15.
Can we just skip to Sunday?
In a bit of a rivalry game, and it actually had a whole lot more luster last year than it did this year. Washington will travel to Eugene to face the #1 ranked Ducks. Ducks favored by 18.5. Kickoff 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
The Apple Cup's not this weekend?
All of these big rivalry games out of the way early.
The Apple Cup's not this weekend?
Apple Cup's next weekend.
They do the Apple Cup Conference Championship weekend. Did they know they weren't going to be in a conference championship, either team?
Actually, they didn't even do the Apple Cup.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, they actually did. Because of the fact that Washington State did not join a conference, they did the Apple. They moved that to earlier this year. They did the same thing.
Okay.
Now that I think about it, they did the same thing with the Civil War. So Oregon and Oregon State was much earlier in the season. They kept the rivalry, but they don't put it at the end of the season because they're not conference aligned anymore. Realistically, if we think about it, clean old-fashioned hate in the Palmetto and the Palmetto Cup in between Clemson and South Carolina are two of the only major rivalry games, and Florida State, that actually occur that are interconference.
Okay, and that's because they're in the same state. And
Right.
that'd be like if OU was any good and played Ohio State, or Michigan. If you played Michigan State in that weekend.
Yeah.
Look, Washington is down because they lost a good chunk to the NFL, lost their coach to Alabama, who is going to get run out of that state any minute. They're going to get blown out.
A couple more here, as I had too many things open. Lone Star State shootout. This is the big one, and this is the one that's going to have a lot of dominoes fall. 7:30 p.m. Kyle Field, College Station, Texas. #3 Texas, currently at the #2 seed in the tournament, will travel to College Station to play the #15 Texas A&M Aggies. Texas favored by 5.5.
A&M took a gut punch losing to Auburn yesterday. I think A&M is going to get run off the field. And if I could just interrupt for 1 second, 122-108 good guys. The Cleveland Cavaliers are now 16-1 or 17-1 in their first 18.
Two more here at 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. An interesting one for how different their seasons have gone, but very surprising for one of them. It will actually be Nevada traveling to Las Vegas to face the #24 UNLV Rebels in the Fremont Cannon game, and UNLV favored by 18.5.
UNLV is going to win that game in a walk.
And then another one that actually, always ends up giving us a good one. Another that's got massive playoff implications that we alluded to earlier. 10:15 p.m. One of the latest games. Actually, it's going to be the late game that doesn't, happen. It's going to be the latest playoff ramification game of the Continental 48 states. Let's call it what it is. It will be Houston traveling to #14 BYU. Cougars favored by 12.5.
BYU has to win.
Houston is 4-7.
Yeah, BYU's got to win. Their back's against the wall. You're talking about a team that was going to be a bracket buster coming out of the Big 12, getting a bye, and then possibly getting a bowl game in the quarterfinal close to home. There's a chance they won't even get to the conference championship game if they lose this game. So I think BYU's got to win. Look for Houston to keep it close.
Because we always see that a lot of, sometimes these rivalry games get a lot closer than what their records say. I mean, who's to say that Colorado, even though it's not a rivalry game, when the back's against the wall, yeah, they're playing a team that hasn't won in conference all year. Watch Oklahoma State keep that game close.
Agreed, especially if Shador's not playing.
So let's actually get to one more topic here. We'll actually take a short halftime. We'll come back. We'll get to some more festivities, and then we'll actually call it a night. And everyone can enjoy their holiday weekend. You know, had we not gone so long with Zach, this probably would have eaten up the most time of anything, just because we're going to talk about what happened here. We're going to definitely have to cut the conversation down, but there's so many more dominoes that are going to end up falling with this too.
As one of the cats play with one of Bobby's toys. All right. First of all, I need everyone who gave Baker Mayfield shit about asking the question as to why they took Daniel Jones to shut up. This is why David Cutcliffe is no longer a coach in football. And this is why the Mannings need to stay with the media. He was god awful.
And yet he's thrown for over 15,000 yards, and his touchdown to interception ratio was, I think he had thrown upwards of 25 more touchdowns than he did interceptions. But this year,
I find that hard to believe.
He's been arguably in the bottom 5 of all quarterback play, certainly amongst starters.
I think the only quarterback who played worse as a starter than him was Billy.
On the top,
here's where
of that guy. Yeah, go. Let's talk about Daniel Jones. We'll talk about how the domino effect now actually hits my hometown and the team that we both cheer for, and then we'll actually talk about what happened on Thursday for a couple of minutes.
Yes. So let's talk about Danny Dimes in this route here. I think the Mara family has started to have collective Alzheimer's, as they said they want to commit to Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll for years to come. When, Joe Schoen's the one who decided to sign Daniel Jones and let Saquon Barkley go to Philadelphia, where he is not only having a very much meme-worthy season with the backwards hurdle of a player, but he is putting up the best numbers of his career. Behind what, Jim? Oh my God, a good offensive line.
Missing that actually had to replace a Hall of Famer nonetheless.
And speaking of said Hall of Famer, congratulations to Jason and Kylie Kelsey on the impending birth of their 4th little girl.
And Saquon has got 16 touches for 89 yards and 52 yards after contact already tonight.
Oh my God.
As they're at halftime, as the Rams are actually honoring as they are honoring the greatest show on turf at SoFi Stadium.
Nice.
Good.
I don't know how it got this far. I don't. I've said this in jest, but now I'm going to say it for real. Dwayne Haskins would still be alive and still be playing in the NFL if the Giants would have taken Dwayne Haskins instead of Daniel Jones.
Although, if you think about it, he's kind of going. It's the trend that I don't know where it started, and it certainly was not with the guy that I'm going to bring up here in a second. But he got the Giants their first playoff victory in a couple of decades. Let's be honest. And then they reward him with a giant contract that he can't live up to. Oh yeah, another guy who's doing that is down in Jacksonville, who, even though he's a very good quarterback, let's be honest. Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback. Has he fallen off? Yes. Has he fallen off to the level of Daniel Jones? Hell no. Daniel Jones really had tons of weapons, as I think Saquon just actually broke. Yep. Saquon actually just went house call on the first play of the second half for 73 yards.
If I was John Mara and I'm sitting here having to cut my $160 million quarterback who now has dead cap money that they cannot use, and I watched Saquon Barkley just break one to the house to start the second half. I'm hitting him with a baseball bat a la Robert De Niro as Al Capone in the fucking Untouchables, and I want him dead. I want his dude. You've got to go. I understand that you want to try and get some continuity with a coach and a GM. Look at Cleveland, who's had two playoff runs under this current regime. But another franchise that made a bonehead decision at quarterback now has to reset. The difference is they're in Cleveland. They're not in New York. If you think the talk radio in Cleveland is bad, and we've heard some
touched him. My God.
I'll have to watch the replay of that.
He went straight through the line, straight through right guard, and nobody touched him.
Yeah, running backs get worse as they get older.
Yeah, he made one move and nobody touched him.
Is the Rams defense that bad?
I think the blocking was just that good, as is Saquon. Wow. That was impressive when I watched it live. When I watched the replay, it was even better.
Jesus.
I digress.
And I will continue. If you think Ken Carman and Rizzo going crazy is bad, that's 5 shows on 2 different networks in New York. The level of football shit show the city of New York is right now is epic. Because we're not going to talk about Captain Hyaska, because I can't. I just can't.
So let's talk Fallout now. Because this is actually now going to, we're going to start, and now they put up Saquon's numbers, 14 carries, 143 yards, and a touchdown, 70 of them on that last play. But now we're looking at dominoes, because now the Giants have basically kind of, quit on their season and are going to be looking for a top 5 draft pick. They're going to go quarterback. If I'm a Browns fan, my fear is that, that'll actually take a Cam Ward or a Jackson Dart or somebody who I would want, off the board here. But this is also, can you put this in? Is the ineptitude of what's going on with the Giants organization going to cost Brian Daboll his job? Because and I know we hate to agree with Stephen A., but Stephen A. Smith is absolutely correct, is that the problem is not Brian Daboll. Daboll can coach. The problem is not Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski can coach. It's what's been laid out above them. And this was not Andrew Berry, I don't think, because I don't think it was his call to bring the guy who we cannot name by name on this show. And I love the fact that with the clip that you had sent me earlier this week, you notice we have actually now reached that stage where they will not even refer to him by name.
It's beautiful. It's also something you and I called 3 years ago.
It's not the same thing in terms of how detrimental it is and how horrific an act it was. Has Deshaun Watson in the city of Cleveland been Chris Benoit?
Ooh.
Has he gotten that level of treatment for how he's referred to going forward? And be honest. Be honest and objective here.
I think you're onto something. When you bring in a quarterback that costs you that much capital and money, or draft capital and money, and you're being asked at a press conference, what are your goals for him for next season? And it's not getting him back on the field, it's getting him healthy.
And you've brought in 2 aging veterans who've had previous playoff experience and have played better than any game that he suited up for in relief roles nonetheless midway through the season. The issue is not Stefanski.
No, the issue isn't Stefanski. And I will say this. John Mara has said he's not firing his GM and coach. He's tired of going through them every couple of years. So Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will have a job. Wait, was it? Oh, it was fucking Gettleman who re-signed Daniel Jones, wasn't it?
Right.
All right, so I can't put this on their front office. I can't put the Saquon thing on them for buying into a basically standard or media, not standard, industry bias towards running backs. But I think, yes, Daboll can coach. Look what he did with Josh Allen. I think if you gave him a quarterback who had actual talent and wasn't a byproduct of one of your all-time greats basically smooching his cheeks, and we all know that's why they took him, was the rubber stamp from Eli Manning. You could have a different trajectory of franchise. Moving that to Cleveland, at least the Giants didn't have to deal with 3 years of giving up their entire franchise.
And I was just
to
thinking
do that
because the extension that I show there, the 4-year, $160 million, only 92 of that was guaranteed. So there's still $70 million of that money that had they released him at any time, they could have pulled off, spread out over 4 years. So they're not into this for $180 million still over the next 2 years like the Cleveland Browns are tied into. It's something where maybe they're saving, 35 or 40 million, the Giants are, over the course of the next 2 years. But what does this actually do now for some of these guys who got those massive payouts around the same time? What does this do for the guy in Cleveland who I only mentioned by name a few moments ago for the sake of context? What does that do possibly to a Trevor Lawrence? What does that do to some of these other guys out there who are not living up to those? Justin Herbert has now got his coach and is now back to his top 5 form. Trevor Lawrence does not have that. The guy in Cleveland is never going to be there and likely may not ever see the field as a starting quarterback in the NFL the same way again.
Let me say this. Trevor Lawrence is going nowhere because Jacksonville is trying to get funding to redo their stadium, and Sunshine is the face of the franchise. So you're not going to do that. Cleveland knows they have no course forward but to get rid of him, because now the whispers you and I started 3 years ago are coming to fruition, where it's, was he worth the off-field and the draft capital and the money? And now they want a stadium. It's not happening.
This is why the Houston Texans have not yet signed CJ Stroud to one of those overblown contracts, because he gets that playoff win in his rookie year, and now they're 7-5.
Well, let me also say this. I don't think Stroud is the type of person or player that will allow the team to be dismantled around him. Russell Wilson is, and he learned very quickly he couldn't be. You know who CJ is as far as mentality goes? He's Baker with more talent.
What is that? Okay, let's actually pull some other names out there before we go before we run to halftime. Kyler Murray. The Cardinals are 6-5 right now, and actually in 2 field goals. He had 285 yards and an interception today against Seattle, losing 16-6.
He's gone. If they pick, well, no, they'll probably keep him next year, and then tank for whoever the big one coming out is going to be. I think Arizona's biggest problem is they drafted a guy who could be a stud and a true number 1 wide receiver, and Kyler can't see him, figuratively and literally.
I'm not going to throw the rookie class from last year into this equation, so I'm not going to talk Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson because both have been dramatically underperforming.
And injured and full.
Exactly, and for that same reason, there was somebody else I was going to talk. I'm not going to talk about Brock Purdy not having gotten his massive contract yet because he's been off injured the last 2 years. As the 49ers fall below 500 after getting run off the field by the Packers today. Jordan Love gets his big contract, but he's got the Packers sitting at 8-3 and right on Minnesota's ass right now. With the Vikings having won today over Chicago in overtime.
I think what you're going to see, especially, I'm going to use Stroud as an example and Baker as an example. What you see, we're going to see what Stroud is. Stroud came in with another guy who was a franchise type guy. He knows he's not alone. Baker, you all right?
Yeah, it's a elbow was like sitting on the rest a little bit, and I didn't so much hit it, but it's like it's at a weird angle in the pad.
Mm-hmm. My office chair does that.
Yeah.
Baker said on TV he would make concessions to bring Mike Evans back, which as much as Baker is the face of Tampa Bay right now, Mike Evans has been there for forever. Stroud is in that mold. CJ Stroud knows that they're going to need salary cap space to keep a team around him that can win. Look what he came from at Ohio State. Look at the group around him. He knows it's a team game. The problem is with the media and some of these quarterbacks, they think it's just them. It's not. So it really depends on who's going to do what. And as far as this year's class goes, holy shit, have they underperformed? The only one who hasn't underperformed is Michael Penix. That's because he hasn't played.
And J.J. McCarthy, who's hurt. Yeah.
Do you know who the best quarterback right now among the rookies is?
Bo Nix.
Bo Nix.
I mean, I think as it stands right now, I'd have to look, but I want to say Denver's in a playoff position right now.
I think so.
As the Rams just went right down the field and scored and answered with a touchdown of their own. Your number one in the AFC is Kansas City. Buffalo is the 2. Pittsburgh's the 3. Houston's the 4. Chargers 5. Baltimore 6. Denver is the 7 seed right now with a game and a half lead over Miami. And ironically enough, so the top 7 teams that are currently sitting in playoff position in the AFC are the only ones that are that are above 500. You flip over to the NFC, things get a little bit muddier. Detroit is right now got a 2-game lead as the number 1 seed at 10-1. Philadelphia is at 8-2 as the 2 seed. Seattle is the 3, and they've got the tiebreaker over Atlanta, and they're 6-5. Atlanta's 6-5. Minnesota, as great of a start as they had, they are currently the 5 at 9-2. Green Bay is 8-3. Washington is 7-5. Look, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the 49ers are sitting at the 8, 9, 10 spot right now. And Tampa Bay sitting at 11th at 5-6, but only a game behind.
Yeah, and Tampa's had injury after injury after injury. Chris Godwin's done for the year. They're going to get Mike Evans back hopefully next week. But listen, they're still got a good defense, and Baker has been playing out of his mind. So it's going to be interesting coming down to the wire in the NFL.
And then one team who's not going anywhere, but I actually just see that has a tiebreaker based off of 2 teams that are even sitting below them are the 3-8 Cleveland America Browns, who had the most entertaining game of the NFL season. It was even more than Buffalo, Kansas City. It was the most entertaining game of the NFL season on Thursday night.
So I don't normally watch when they're on because of my boycott that I've had for the last few years, but I get a picture, in my family group chat of my sister, brother-in-law, niece, and nephew, because Kate turned 14 and that was her birthday gift, going to the game. So I turned it on. And Jim, we are seeing the reemergence of the Dark Knight. As Nicholas Jamal Chubb scores 2 touchdowns, giving the Pittsburgh Steelers one of those. And the fucking Browns have beaten Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
3-8, not going anywhere. Salary cap hell. But you beat the Squealers on national TV in a snow globe, and it saves the season. Although it looked like it wasn't going to for a little bit, I put out a tweet saying that it saves the season, and then Pittsburgh scores 2 touchdowns in the matter of about 7 minutes. And already people are roasting me on threads that, yeah, this take, you might want to, you not so fast, my friend, essentially. And then the Browns, take the win right there at the end.
It's a great game. I fell asleep. I went to bed at halftime because I was just tired, but the first half was amazing. And screw the Steelers.
It was just so incredible. Just, I mean, what's the age-old adage? You having lived here for a number of years, if you don't like the weather in Cleveland,
wait 5 minutes.
In this case, it was 10 minutes. There were a few flurries at the start of the second half, at the very, very start of the second half. 10 minutes are showing remaining in the second quarter. Now you're seeing it start to come down. The visibility is getting a little worse. There's about 7 minutes left. You're starting to see finally the field get coated. There are 5 minutes left. You can't see the yard markers.
No.
Chris Boswell goes to kick a field goal, and Al Michaels says Boswell's kick is up if you can find it, and asking if there was a GPS in the ball to confirm that it went through.
Those games bring joy to my heart.
It was...
Who needs a fucking dome?
Yeah. It was... I mean, I couldn't stop. I had it on in the background. I was playing video games because I was off Thursday night, and I actually was hearing about it. And then when I actually started hearing Siciliano and Segura start talking about it a little bit more, I'm like, I have to kind of look. It's piqued my interest, and I could not stop watching it. I turned it on, and the video games took a rest for the remainder of the night. I made myself a cup of hot chocolate. It's I kind of wish it was tonight instead, because the Christmas tree is up in the next room. I've got the Christmas lights strung all around the floor here in this room. So I'm all ready. Half of my shopping's done. It looked like it was a mid-December game as opposed to the week before Thanksgiving.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Hey, what do you say we skip halftime tonight? Because we're already at 2 hours.
I could do that.
Let's jump right into the blast.
Hey, in case you haven't noticed, and judging by the attendance, you haven't.
So sorry you have to deal with us for 2 hours straight, guys.
I mean, you were going to get it, but it was only going to get, a 5-minute commercial break?
Basically. So let's see what we got in the blast for tonight, James. Ovi's tough, man.
And he's only 26 behind Gretzky's record. And at 39 years old, was on pace before this injury, as he's now got a fractured fibia. He was on pace for 68 goals.
Unreal.
I mean, this is definitely going to put a dent in his, in his chase. But I mean, he's scheduled to return at the earliest December 20th. He also was like, after having a very down year by OV standards and what we've been spoiled about last year, just really somebody lights a fire under his ass, and he's back to how he was. He looks now at 39 like he looked middle of his career when he was hanging 50 every season.
Yeah, no, and you figure these guys, the hockey players, the age thing always mesmerizes me how long they do play. But I tell you, he's going to get Gretzky. He's going to catch him. That's why he lit the fire. He wants to get it. So, best of luck to him in that, but tough to see him go out and for 4-6 for the busted leg. Jim, if you could enlighten me on the coaching stunners in the NHL. I think I talked to you about one of them.
Yeah, one of the 2 years removed from an NHL record for wins, the Boston Bruins broke off Jim Montgomery for having one of the highest winning percentages of any head coach with at least 200 games. And having gotten the Bruins to the playoffs and winning the Atlantic Division each of the last 2 years. The Bruins were 8-9-3 and then fired Montgomery, who was the 2023 Jack Adams winner as coach of the year after setting that record.
Wow.
It was very much like the age-old story that Paul Heyman once said about bringing Steve Austin into ECW after Eric Bischoff had fired him from WCW on the phone, saying, I was lucky I was the first guy to call. And the first guy to call happened to be St. Louis Blues general manager Doug Armstrong, who then fires current head coach Drew Bannister after the Blues have lost 4 in a row, and I want to say 8 of their last 12, and then hires Jim Montgomery to a 5-year contract. Just that.
That's pretty. I think that's a huge upgrade there.
You never really see a coach get broken off. That would be the equivalent of Belichick getting fired by the Patriots and then immediately getting snatched up by somebody else 2 days later as they fired their coach. Now, with the Blues, Bannister was actually signed to a 2-year contract last year after Craig Berube, who led the Blues to their only Stanley Cup title in 2019, was fired after an abysmal start to their year by Blues standards, let's be honest, even though the Blues have not made the playoffs the last couple of years. But for them to fire Bannister, who had actually been promoted from their AHL club in Springfield, Massachusetts, after half a season as the full-time head coach, after removing the interim role, to be able to bring in somebody the caliber of a Jim Montgomery, I don't know if I've ever really seen something like that in pro sports where they get somebody of that caliber really midway through the season like that.
2003 Florida Marlins, Jack McKeon. And all he does is go on and win a World Series.
Yeah, but McKeon wasn't coaching somewhere else and gotten broken off. He had been sitting on the couch.
Yeah, he was in the front office.
Right.
But I'm basically saying the changing of a coach mid-season to one of that kind of caliber, that's the only one that comes to mind to me. Yeah, I can't think of any other ones. Not in the NFL.
I mean, the only thing could we maybe put this on in perspective? It would be like if Dallas were to eventually break off Mike McCarthy, like a lot of people are thinking, what if they do it in the final month of the season here and then things really go south with Cleveland? And let's say they announce that Stefanski gets fired. Does Jerry Jones hire Stefanski 35 seconds later, right, after the press release comes down? That's the only thing I can think about with this. You've got a record-setting head coach that, his playoff experience the last 2 years was abysmal because they lose to the Panthers both years. One of those years blowing a 3-1 lead, and then the other year losing in the second round after winning an NHL record 65 regular season games. And immediately somebody snatches him up less than 5 days later after breaking off their own coach that they just signed 6 months earlier.
It'd be interesting. It'd be very interesting. I am more shocked that they did that mid-season. I mean, that's the shocking thing. It's not so much getting rid of the guy you brought up through your AHL team, than getting rid of him for an established coach. Mid-season is what gets it for me. Let's brush over Verstappen with his Force F1 title, because I know that's more your thing, and then get some AEW in here. But if I may, one of my favorite threads and X creators put out the Cleveland sports power rankings today, and the top 3 spots are all the Cavs. So Verstappen, was Michael Schumacher the last one to do that 4 in a row?
I want to say it might have been Lewis Hamilton,
Okay.
but Verstappen actually only had to finish ahead of the guy behind him in the standings to be able to clinch his 4th straight championship. And I finished watching the AEW pay-per-view, and that's the only reason I actually thought about it. And I'm looking at ESPN to be able to figure out how some of the college football games ended so I can actually start working on my notes. And I see races live, and I'm thinking, okay, because they race all over the world, okay, they're overseas or something. And I see it says Las Vegas. And we're talking, it's 11, 12 o'clock. And I'm like, oh shit, that's right. They basically do the Grand Prix on the streets of Las Vegas live. And they shut basically most of the streets of the city down for a few hours. And they were only 12 laps into this race when I tuned in at 12:30. So this race went until almost 2 a.m.
Jesus.
Because of the 3-hour time difference.
Yeah. But hey, hats off to Verstappen. That's 4 in a row is 4 in a row.
At 27 years old. Yeah. I mean,
that's what I was going to say. He's young.
I actually remember watching when he won his first one live with the controversy that happened with him and Lewis Hamilton. Basically, it comes down to the final race of the year on the final lap. Verstappen, I want to say, finished 4th. I think he only had to finish ahead of Lando Norris because it actually would have put it mathematically out of reach, because the Formula One still has 2 races left. I can't remember where they are next week, but they also finish up in UAE in their season-ending race, which is always highly, highly entertaining. But for Verstappen to be this dominant and have this wrapped up with 2 weeks left to go, I want to say that Lewis Hamilton's team, Mercedes, or I can't remember if it was Mercedes or McLaren. I want to say it was McLaren, wins the owner's trophy for the year, or the engineer's trophy or something like that. It was very entertaining just because with the city streets and everything, how low to the car those F1 cars are. Every time they were actually going through a corner or a chicane or anything like that on the streets of Vegas, you were seeing sparks coming off of some portion of somebody's car.
Nice.
It didn't matter if it was a chassis, if it was the front wing. It didn't matter where it was coming from, but you were seeing sparks everywhere.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So how'd the pay-per-view go?
Pay-per-view was highly entertaining. I actually got to see my girl Anna Jay on the pre-show with a big win over Deonna Purrazzo. AJ, the Costco guy, who I don't know if you've seen who this guy is.
No.
He's a social media personality that was a wrestler back then, and they do things on TikTok now. I guess it's like him and his son. has his first match in years, and they're in Jersey, his home state, and it's entertaining as hell. He's fighting QT Marshall, who's like one of the lead trainers of AEW, and it probably one of the best reactions of the night. We have Private Party retaining the AEW World Tag Team titles. We are probably going to see the Acclaim breaking up very, very soon.
Oh
A
no!
lot of tension there with that team. We had MJF take down. You can tackle him if you want to. We saw MJF take down Adam Cole's best friend, Roderick Strong, in a fairly one-sided match. And then Cole comes out to run MJF off and then gets into it with his other best friend, Kyle O'Reilly. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. All setting up the stage for eventually the clash, for Cole trying to get his revenge on MJF. Match of the night easily has to be Will Ospreay against his former best friend, Kyle Fletcher. Fletcher picks up the biggest win of his career, going over Ospreay clean in one of the most disturbing spots I've seen in years. Kyle Fletcher tombstones Will Ospreay on the steel steps from the apron.
Jesus.
Mercedes Moné defends the TNT Championship against Chris Statlander in a match that a lot of people thought that Statlander should have won, but I think it's really setting the stage for Mercedes muscle, so to speak. Camille, the former longtime reigning NWA Women's Champion, I think she held that title for 4 years. Eventually, teasing a turn like that, a la like Kevin, like Diesel turning on Shawn Michaels and everything, like from way back when, if you remember that, Kevin Nash and everything.
Virgil turning on Ted DiBiase. I remember that too.
Exactly. But this time there's going to be titles involved.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what else we had. Konosuke Takeshita retains the international championship against that legendary Irish wrestler Rick O'Shea in a great high-flying contest.
Speaking of, you saw his girl left WWE, right?
Casey Catanzaro. Samantha Irwin. Yes.
And I want to ask you something about.
I still actually follow back to where like he was Prince Puma, wrestling. In Mexico, and PWG and everything. We also and then we had arguably the most entertaining match of the entire night, and that was the main event between AEW champion Jon Moxley and freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. The fight starts where Cassidy hits 4 Superman punches, what he calls the Orange Punch, right after the bell. Actually, even jumps him during the rings, during the introductions. Moxley eventually gets the win, and then all hell breaks loose. So Moxley's group, the Death Riders, come out. Cassidy is all bloodied up, and they actually start pouring like solvent cleaner on him to be able to sting with the wounds and everything even more. Cassidy's group, the Conglomeration, comes out to try and run them off. They brawl everywhere. You have Hangman Adam Page, who lost earlier in the night to Jay White in a very, very good contest, very good technical contest. Come out and lay out Moxley with a chair, and leading to possibly Christian Cage cashing in his contract, their version of a Money in the Bank, and gets stopped at the very last second from being able to cash in on Moxley, teasing that. And then more guys come out and more things get run off. And then the Death Riders head to the back and they go to jump in their truck. And as they're walking to their truck, a car comes out of the blue and basically sideswipes the truck. Thankfully, nobody was in it. And the car is all painted up and everything. And you kind of have an idea where it's going. And they basically beat up the valet. They steal the keys. They rip off somebody's GMC Suburban, all pile in that and drive off. And who comes out of the car? Darby fucking Allin.
Nice.
Who is now a lot of people think is going to be the one to take the title off of Jon Moxley. It's just all a matter, is it going to happen at World's End next month? Are they going to save it for the March pay-per-view? Because they've got other plans in mind for Darby to possibly have the world title going into All In when they're down in Jerry's place next year. I want to say it's Jerry's place. I can't remember if it's Jerry's place or in Houston. But very not a whole lot really out of the ordinary, but very, very entertaining of a show.
Did you see how SmackDown ended Friday?
Yeah. It was
That's interesting.
For about 2 seconds.
That's interesting, though.
But Heyman coming back in that pop was just everything, considering
it really was.
I've been a Paul Heyman guy since he was Paulie Dangerously, and he had Beautiful Bobby, Rick Rude, Larry Zbyszko, and Arn Anderson as part of the Dangerous Alliance with Missy Hyatt. We're talking 93 War Games in WCW.
Well, I think that's
the brick telephone.
Yep, and I think that'll be an interesting War Games match with Punk joining the original Bloodline. I find it very funny that the two guys who aren't quote unquote Bloodline who are in this thing are Sami Zayn and CM Punk.
Who?
Sami Zayn.
Sami Uce.
Oh, Sami Uce. Yes.
That triple plancha was impressive because typically you can get two guys with that because because even if somebody's got to grab the ropes, there's still a little bit of flex. You never really see a 3-pack of that.
No, you don't. So War Games is going to be interesting. But Jim, we're at 2:13. It's time for band practice.
Shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the greatest segment of the night because it is the last segment of the night, and that is the YZ Translator. The moment when James and I give each other names in and out of the sports world, and we come up with the first thing that pops into our brains. As has taken over my embellishing of the translator's history, we will now unveil the Chiron. The fact that I've never seen you drink anything alcoholic makes that even funnier.
It doesn't actually even matter if it's alcohol.
That's true. In the words of the little girl from the Adam Sandler movie, I want to get chocolate wasted. So, James, as it is incumbent upon me to give the first name in the translator, I'm going to go here. And your first name in tonight's YZ Translator is Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer.
What did you think was going to happen when he goes to step into the shoes of the greatest college football coach who ever lived? Ask Gerard Mayo, what's happening trying to fill the shoes of Belichick up in Foxborough. It's not going to end well. There's going to be some growing pains. Yeah, you're going to have to rebuild this thing. But for anyone actually calling for his head or actually talking about the job that he did, back off a little bit.
Agreed. And I will point to Saban's first year in Tuscaloosa. He was 7-5.
And Bama couldn't. I mean, they're 8-3 right now. So
yeah, well, they're about to be 9-3.
And there's a distinct possibility they could end up losing their bowl game. Even if it's not a playoff.
Agreed. So who you got for me there, bud?
Michael, your first name in the YZ translator tonight. I actually said that we weren't going to talk about him earlier, so I'm going to throw him at you now. We saw what he did yesterday, and I want your thoughts on it. Mr. Fred Van Vliet.
I'd like to know who Mighty Mouse who the fuck he thinks he is. Dude, your claim to fame is you are the first non-drafted player to sign a $100 million contract. You've earned 50 cents of it. Shut the fuck up.
I mean, he got his title in 2019 with the Raptors, but yeah, he's going to be able to enjoy his Thanksgiving holiday, even though where he's playing, they celebrated it last month.
Very true. No, he's not in Toronto anymore. They traded him because he was garbage after they gave him the money.
That's right. But either way, he's going to have a nice little extended break for the next. I'm going to put the over-under on 10 games on this.
And remember, Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard won a title in 2019. Fred Van Vliet was the, as I like to call it, the JaVale McGee Participation Award.
I can't see a scenario where they don't suspend him at least 2 weeks.
He's gone.
However many do they give him 5 games? Do they give him 10 games?
I think they give him 10. And in the NBA, now remember, only the Cavs play 17 games in 23 days. No one else does that shit. So it's probably about 3 weeks where he'll be sitting.
I mean, what? Typically in basketball, you leave the floor, you leave the bench, it's an automatic 1-game suspension. Draymond, Draymond's last suspension lasted 7 games?
Something like that.
Draymond hit a guy in the face and got 7 games. Fred Van Vliet put his finger in an official's face and called him a bitch while getting run. Is it as violent as what Draymond did? No. Does it warrant a longer suspension? Debatable, but absolutely plausible.
If I may, was it like this? I'm giving you a decent video to cut. Shut up.
Rusty cunt bucket.
So I will give you the second and your final name of the evening. And I'm going to go on a different route here. James, your second name in the YZ Translator is Cleveland Cavaliers 6th Man of the Year candidate, Ty Jerome.
Mark Price would be so proud right now.
Yes.
And Mark Price was never a 6th man, but my God, is it entertaining to be able to see what a guy can do with a second chance like this.
Did you see his numbers?
I mean, he has his first start of the year when we're on the air last week and puts up 24 points as a career high. He's one of the guys that actually sparked them staying in front when that lead started shrinking down to a 2-possession game tonight. They end up winning, by double digits again. but he's just this is the Kenny Atkinson, effect, is that it's a different guy every night. Jared has a monster dunk that gets the whole place on its feet where it looked like he was going to pull the damn rim down in the fourth quarter. Evan has another phenomenal game. But everyone seems to be, when on these nights where, Darius may not have it, or Donovan sits like he did tonight, Ty Jerome is just as important a piece right now as arguably any of the five guys on the floor with the way he's played in this system right now.
28 minutes, 26 points, 3 boards, 6 assists from Ty Jerome tonight.
And there's no argument that you can make that anyone legitimately is going to listen to that he should be in the starting lineup right now on nights where you rest either Darius or Donovan. You keep this exactly what it is. You let him spell them, so this way he's getting 28 minutes instead of playing 35 minutes a night.
Well, I will say this:
productivity by throwing him those extra minutes.
Yeah, Donovan did lead the team in minutes again tonight. Led the team, him and Ty Jerome tied for the lead in scoring. But I want to point something out. Isaac Okoro played 29 minutes tonight. He was 4 of 4, 2 of 2 behind the arc. He had 10 points, 6 boards, 4 assists. That's all you need out of him because he's playing lockdown defense every other minute of the game.
Right.
Listen, there are very few times in my life when people tell me I was right, and everybody I've talked to has been telling me when my Kenny Atkinson take has been right. So I'm going to eat it up for as long as I can.
Michael, your second and final name in the YZ translator tonight, and I want you to have a little bit of fun with this, and I want you to be completely honest.
Okay.
Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver George Pickens.
He's like if Johnny Manziel and fucking Brown had a goddamn love child. This fucking asshole. I swear to Christ. The Pittsburgh Steelers have had some asshole players, but who were still good players. George Pickens is a dumb motherfucker who isn't that good. He's not.
For those of you
did I see it right? Was he fighting Newsom instead of trying to score on the Hail Mary?
After the play, that's actually what I was just going to bring up. The NFL will be investigating. They have actually said that they have already launched an investigation as to him dragging Newsom out of the end zone by his face mask and up against a retaining wall and nearly getting into it with fans who were throwing snowballs at him afterwards.
Somebody should put a battery in one of them snowballs.
And this is Cincinnati. You don't live in Cleveland.
No, they live in Kentucky.
Which is absolutely hilarious, that not only is he going to be investigated for that, but he's probably also going to be fined because he actually says the only reason the Cleveland Browns won that game on Thursday night were because of the elements and the officiating.
You play in Pittsburgh. You should be used to the elements, you dumb bastard.
Yeah.
As far as the officiating goes.
The only difference is that, you play on grass, but you're more inland, so you don't get lake effect.
Yeah, and as far as the officiating goes, I'm sorry. I can probably count on one hand the amount of games an official has made a call that actually benefited the Cleveland Browns.
Even as dog shit as they are.
Dude, if you combined, seriously, Johnny Manziel's coke use, Brown's off the railness, and the dirty play of Minkah Fitzpatrick, you would have George Pickens.
I'm going to give myself one extra bonus in the YZ translator. It's not going to be for you. I'm going to give myself my own tonight, and I probably won't even cut this into the video. But James, your bonus name in the YZ translator this evening is TJ Watt.
Can I play too?
Have they still called his name yet? And the game's been over for 3 days?
Hold on. I got better than that. How are you
Michael,
going to bitch about?
your bonus name in the YZ translator tonight is TJ Watt. Yeah, I'm cutting this in the video.
Okay. We're going to start here.
Rusty cunt bucket.
And then we're going to go here. I want to know how you consider yourself to be the defensive player of the year when a patchwork offensive line on a dog shit team and you don't get your name called.
You had one
And it's
tackle and
Jameis.
you had 1 tackle and 4 assists. Meanwhile, the guy who beat you out for the award had 3 sacks in the first half.
And a forced fumble. You'll never be your brother, TJ. Who, by the way, very good on TV.
He's also got some of the best. I mean, outside of a couple of guys named Manning, has the best commercials of any former pro player, because I'm always going to remember him as "Shut You Down."
Yeah. So, James, next week we will come to you same time, same bat channel, and we're gonna have another big show. It's our first show of December. Probably one of the final 3 we do in the calendar 2024.
I was just going to say, we actually mentioned last week that we were going to have an update. So we've only got realistically 2 normal format shows before the end of the year. So we got next week, and then we got December 8th, because the week after, December 15th, will be our final show of the year. And that will be the Wise Guys Holiday Free-for-All 3, where basically it's just nothing but holiday memories, looking back at the best of 2024. We're going to have a lot of fun. We'll talk. The hat trick will definitely not be a thing. We'll talk sports for maybe the first half hour of the show, and then it's just going to be a 2-hour free-for-all after that of whatever else we decide to do. Holiday
Well,
treats,
yeah, because you
clips, you name it.
Well, yeah, because you figure the first half hour we're going to have to break down, because the week after that is the first round of the playoffs. So we'll have to break that down.
We're also going to have the NFL playoffs basically lined up, take form here.
But we got 3 episodes left, guys. In our 2024 Odyssey, as it has been, we will end this thing on 95, which means when we come back after the new year, we are stone cold down into the count to 100. And knowing my co-host as I do, it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, so even more so thinking of how we're going to end, how the holiday free-for-all is going to end up here in 3 weeks is going to be more interesting, knowing that right after we come back, we got your birthday, we're going to have the 100, and then we've also got the Wisey Awards coming up in January.
Yeah, so it's going to be a packed couple of months. On a personal note, I want to again thank you for giving me the opportunity to have Zachary on tonight. And he cooked, man. He cooked.
This is going to be, thank God I only have NCIS this week, and FBI, and really everything else is off, because I will be cutting a lot of video this week. I got a feeling.
Yeah. And again, I appreciate it. And I wasn't lying when I said he just made my year. To have him on the show was a highlight for me. And I don't know if you can see the stupid grin I had on my face the entire time.
So before we sign off here, just a couple of quick moments. Michael, any Thanksgiving traditions or any words you'd actually like to say, as by the time we actually see you, we will officially be into the Christmas season?
Yeah. And you'll probably want to cut my mic after I say it. It is officially Beat Michigan week. That is all.
I'm not going to cut your mic just because it doesn't mean anything this year.
It always means something.
You have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance.
That, and we're not doing a turkey this year because it's just the three of us at home. I am doing lasagna in the crock pot.
I was gonna say, if you said Zaxby's, I'm canceling the show.
We need to talk
What
about
up,
them
Mike?
off the air. We need to talk about them off the air. But yeah, we're gonna do a little crock pot lasagna. I haven't decided which two desserts I'm making because, again, Big Rican isn't just a clever name; it is a lifestyle. So, what about you, Jim? I know you got the Friendsgiving with Adam and them next weekend too, but
Yeah, originally, and we talked about this before we came on the air, is my mother contacts me last weekend, as she always does, and said, "Hey, are you working Friday?" And I'm like, "No, we've been closed for Black Friday for at least the last 7, 8, almost 9 years now." And she's like, "Okay, good. We're going to my brother's, and they're in Avon, so that's a 40-minute drive from where I'm at." And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to be there on Black Friday, which is actually going to throw a huge wrench into some of the plans that I had. I wanted to watch the Warframe dev stream. I wanted to watch the PFL finals. There were a bunch of good college football games that we're going to be on. We talked earlier this afternoon, and she actually says, no, the only reason I asked is because we don't have to be there until 5 or 6. So since we're going to be driving home later, I just didn't want you to actually have to be up and then have to go to work because we weren't going to get home until probably after midnight. So I'm thinking to myself, that dramatically opens things up. So, Thanksgiving early in the afternoon, I'll be watching some football. We'll be over there in time for the second game and the nightcap. We'll come home. I'm going to go pick up the drinks for Friendsgiving. I'm going to watch the PFL finals. I'll watch the Warframe stream. I'll hit the gym on Black Friday. I got half of my shopping already done. Saturday, I'll be over at Adams for the Ohio State Michigan game and Friendsgiving, and then nobody better call, write, or text unless they want to get a 1-week block, present company included, that following Sunday. But it's going to be an eventful week for me. So so I'm actually almost glad that we actually only have 3 episodes left, because I don't know about you, as much time as I enjoy doing this, we need a break.
yes, we do. And again, it's been a content-heavy year, and that's why. James, I'm going to sign off because I'm being paged. I will see you next week. Everybody, have a great rest of your week. Happy Thanksgiving to the Wise Guys world out there, and we will see you next Sunday.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Everyone have yourself a safe and happy holiday weekend. Mike, I will probably talk to you sometime tomorrow or Tuesday. My best to Bobby and Mrs. Rican.
Take care, guys. Thank you, Jim.